So 2 Samuel 16 starts off like this. We meet a familiar face. When David had passed a little beyond the summit, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of donkeys saddled, bearing 200 loaves of bread, 100 bunches of raisins, 100 of summer fruits, and a skin of wine. If you remember, Ziba, the servant that David called in, hey, is there anyone I can show the love of God to Jonathan, my best friend? And he's the one who remembers, yep, there's one guy, he's a cripple, Mephibosheth, brings him in. He takes Mephibosheth basically under his wing, practically adopts the guy, and he says, you're always going to eat at my table. All of your land, all of David, or your father Saul's land, grandfather, all of his land is yours. And Ziba, guess what? You're going to be his servant now. You're in charge of all of his estate, basically, and you need to make sure it's going, make sure it's producing money, make sure it's producing crops. But basically, Ziba, you and your family, you are now Mephibosheth's servants. So that's where we were with Ziba. And he has come, he's giving tons of food and supplies and things to David, which is a very real concern. So that's great. David's probably very, very thankful for this. But he's also got a concern. It says, and David said to Ziba, why have you brought these? Ziba answered, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. David, you got kids, you got elderly people, you got women. I'm bringing donkeys for them to ride on so they don't have to walk. The bread and summer fruits for the young men to eat. You got some soldiers here with you. You're going to need to feed this army. I'm giving you that. And the wine are for those who faint in the wilderness to drink. And the king said, and where is your master's son? Where's Mephibosheth? Ziba said to the king, behold, he remains in Jerusalem. For he said, today the house of Israel will give me back the kingdom of my father. Then the king said to Ziba, behold, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. And Ziba said, I pay homage. Let me ever find favor in your sight, my lord, the king. And I don't know if you know or are familiar with the phrase, to kick someone when they're down. This is kicking David when he's down. Maybe you've heard the expression pouring lemon juice or lime juice on a wound. That's what's going on here. David is at his lowest low. He knows my son, my own son, that I have tried to love. I've admittedly messed up a lot of things, but my own son is trying to kill me right now, pushing me out back into exile like my enemy Saul used to do. My own child. And now I find out that this kid that I basically adopted, who brought nothing to me, he's turned on me now too? He's now only thinking of himself. He doesn't want to help me out. Man, how terrible this is. And so he immediately makes this proclamation and says, guess what? All that stuff that I gave to Mephibosheth, he doesn't have it anymore. Ziba, it's yours. You came through for me. You brought food for me. You care about me. So Ziba, guess what? You get all of this stuff. Now, I hope that you think a little bit, and as we read this and have a chance to think on it, we start to realize maybe there's something wrong with what David's doing here. If we start to think and pause a little bit when we see wrath assigned so quickly, when we see pronouncements given just immediately off the bat, maybe if I start to word it like this, you see someone being quick to anger, quick to speak. Ooh, now we're starting to think of some things. Now we're starting to think and remember James. What does James say? James 1:19. No. We should be slow to anger, slow to speak, and quick to listen. It does not look like David is interested in listening anymore right now. David is angry, he's upset, and so he just acts, he responds. And it is a rash, hasty decision that he makes. We're going to see why that was probably not the best decision to make in that moment. But as we do, we want to learn from David. And so let's write it down this way for point number 1. We don't want to make the same mistakes David makes, so we want to avoid hastiness by wisdom. Avoid hastiness by wisdom. I love that term, hastiness. If you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, it's a huge term by the Ents. They're always saying, man, everyone else in this world is so hasty. They're always just making split-second decisions. how about you stop and just think about it for a minute? How about we stop and talk about it for a minute and try to come to a good decision? And while maybe they take a little too long for everyone else's taste, there is something to that. To not be just hasty, to not make split-second decisions. That's not a wise thing to do. Like I said, I quoted James 1:19-20. You can flip over there if you want. James 1:19-20 says this, even talking about the start of James in trials. You're going to meet trials of various kinds. They're going to be good for you. You need to go through them well. They're going to be helpful for you. And then he gets to verse 19 and he says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." If we are too hasty, we're going to be doing things that are the exact opposite of what we want. We're going to be making decisions, making calls, saying things that are not producing the true righteousness, the true good, correct thing that should happen, that God wants to happen. So let's see, how did that pan out for David? David has this interaction. He immediately just says, hey, you know what? Mephibosheth, done with him. He doesn't get anything anymore. Ziba, you're getting it all because you seem like the guy on my team. Now flip over to chapter 19. 2 Samuel 19, we're skipping a big chunk. Basically, he goes into exile, he leaves, and we're going to be picking back up when he's coming back in. Absalom has been dealt with. We're coming back in chapter 19, starting in verse 24. As David is coming back to the land, a bunch of people meet him at the Jordan River, among whom are Mephibosheth. In verse 24 it says, "And Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. He had neither taken care of his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he came back in safety." Now let's think about that for a second. Does that seem like the actions of a person who's like, yeah, I'm getting mine now. I'm excited. I'm pumped. This is great. Does that seem like the kind of person who's like, okay, I'm taking over now. The kingdom's going to be mine again? Does that sound like that kind of action? No, what does that sound like? It sounds like sorrow. That sounds like bitterness. That sounds like worry and concern. Oh man, this is so terrible what's happening. Okay. That's different than what we heard before. Let's keep going. What does he say? Verse 25, "And when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, 'Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?'" David's still clearly upset about this. And we don't know exactly how long this was. Was this weeks? Was this months? Unsure. But this was clearly a long period of time, a long enough time to tell, yeah, this guy hasn't been taking care of himself. Verse 26, "He answered, 'My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said to him, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I might ride on it and go to the king. For your servant is lame.'" Ooh, did we forget something? Mephibosheth can't walk. He can't use his legs. It's not like he hears from across the town, oh, hey, by the way, David's on his way out, and he's like, great, and just runs out to meet him. No, he's stuck where he's at. He needs someone to come help him. And so he asks for a donkey, and his servant tricks him. Ziba tricks him. And verse 27, "He had slandered your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like the angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. For all my father's house but were men doomed to death before my lord the king. But you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I then to cry to the king?" Oh, that's a very different person than who Ziba was describing. This is someone who loves David. This is someone who knows his position. He's saying the same things he did all the way back in chapter 14 when he's saying, "I'm just a dead dog. What do you care about me, David? This is the greatest good anyone has ever done to me in my entire life." And he still understands that to this day. He hasn't turned on David. He's still a supporter of David. He's still loyal to David, still thankful and grateful to David. And yet David has taken away everything again from him. And the king said, "Why speak any more of your affairs? I've decided. You and Ziba shall divide the land." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Oh, let him take it all. Since my lord the king has come safely home, I don't care about the property, David. I care about you. You're the one that I want. I want to make sure that you're safe. I don't care about the land. I'm not even eating on the land. I'm eating at your table anyway. It doesn't matter to me. David, I care about you." This was a foolish choice that David made. We need to make sure that we don't make these kind of hasty mistakes in our lives, because there's a lot of opportunity to do it. And you know where it regularly happens is in relationships like this. In relationships where someone says something, someone does something, and your split-second reaction is, "Ooh, I know exactly what they did. I know exactly why they did that." And it's almost never right. Maybe every once in a while you can get it right, but for the most part, you're totally wrong. This is what Proverbs says. If we're going to avoid this kind of hastiness by wisdom, Proverbs 18:13 says this: "If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame." Can I tell you, I've lived this before. I've had times where someone was explaining something to me and I got a part of the story, and before thinking to ask more questions, get more information, I immediately gave an answer. And later on, once I got the full story and I found out everything, I was like, "Oh, that was the worst possible thing I could have said in that situation. I wish I had said the exact opposite. That's what I should have said." And it's because I did not stop to think. I did not stop to consider. I answered before I heard the full story. I thought I knew it all. I thought I had all the information, but I didn't. A few verses later in Proverbs 18, verse 17 says this: "The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him." By all accounts, when Ziba showed up with all the food and everything, "Hey, I'm here, I'm loyal to you," that seems right. And then Mephibosheth shows up and he's like, "Hey, David, did you forget I can't walk? That's why I wasn't here? I asked for a donkey and Ziba took all the donkeys away. I couldn't hobble after you. It wouldn't work. So David, no, I wasn't with you, but I still care about you." That is what was going on. Make sure that in your relationships you avoid that kind of hastiness, especially when you're in a difficult place, especially when life's hard, going through a trial, because you're going to immediately want to start making judgments and making those calls and coming to conclusions. And you're going to see someone and they're going to do something and you're going to be like, "Ooh, they did that because they don't like me. Oh, they walked away. You know what? My week has been so hard, and I walked over, and that person from across the hall saw me, and then they turned around and walked the other way, and that shows that they hate me." I've literally had people say that to me when it had nothing to do with them. They had someone calling them on the other side of the hallway, and so they turned, saw the person calling them, and walked over that way. It was as simple as that. But in our sin, in our hastiness, we can start to assign motives and start to look for things that aren't really there. So what do we need to do to avoid that hastiness in wisdom? In wisdom, don't assume negatively in your relationships. Don't automatically go to, "Oh, they are the worst. They clearly hate me. They clearly don't care. They're clearly trying to do something wrong." If you guys are some of you CSM leaders, you know what that's like when even the tribes of Israel did that. Some of the tribes on the east side of the river, they made an altar and they said, "Hey, we're going to use this altar to remind ourselves of who God is, that we serve the God over there on the other side. We only worship him. We're only going to go over there to serve him." And yet the other tribes immediately looked at that altar and they were like, "Great, round everyone up. We're going to go kill all of them." Because they immediately assumed, "Oh, they're building an altar. They've forgotten Yahweh. They've forsaken him. Let's go kill them." And then they had to show up, and it was to their folly and shame. Showed that they were not in the right, though they felt like it. Don't be hasty. Avoid hastiness by going to wisdom. No, wisdom is going to say, let's take time, let's think through it. I'm going to assume positive intentions in others. I'm going to, when I don't really understand how that could be a positive intention, the action that you did, rather than assume, I'm going to assure. I'm going to go and ask and talk to that person. What Israel should have done in that moment is not stir up an army, but just go have a conversation. Hey, what's that altar all about? Oh, it's to remind us of Yahweh. Oh, great. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys. That's all it would have taken. That's all most things will take. But we've got to turn to it and not turn to hastiness instead. Let's flip back over to 2 Samuel 16, because that is one of 3 situations that we have with David here. That was a familiar person, a familiar couple of people that we had, but now we're introduced to someone new in 2 Samuel 16 in verse 5, where we left off. It says, when King David came to Bahurim, there came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. And as he came, he cursed continually. Now, this is not the kind of cursing continually that we would think of, just saying bad words as he's walking along. This is a putting curses upon someone, saying bad things. I want bad for you. Hurling insults at people. Not only is he hurling insults, but he's also hurling actual rocks. Verse 6, and he threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. And Shimei said as he cursed, get out, you man of blood, you worthless man. The Lord has avenged on you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. See, your evil is on you, for you are a man of blood. That is what Shimei is doing, how he is cursing David. You deserve this, David. You should get even worse than this, David. You're going to get found out. You're going to get killed. I want bad things for you. That's what this kind of cursing is. And he's following along, literally throwing rocks at him and throwing words at him. And if you're thinking and remembering the life of David, as he says, you man of blood, literally you murderer, you killed Saul, you've killed so many in Saul's family. If you start to think back, you're like, hang on, wait a minute. That's not right. In fact, the exact opposite is correct. David was not going out and killing Saul and killing Saul's family. He actually restrained himself from doing those things on multiple occasions. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. David even punished the people who did do those things. David was very much against killing Saul and his family. David has adopted a member of Saul's family into his house, basically. All of these are baseless accusations. And Abishai, he understands the situation. Verse 9, then Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, basically the commander of David's army, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and take off his head. Abishai is ready to go. He's ready to throw down. He's not messing around. He's like, I'm just going to go take off this guy's head. And that should sound familiar. Abishai is very upset about this because he also knows David. Because guess what? One of those times when David went into the camp of Saul, guess who was saying, hey, David, let me just take the spear and stab him once. I'll strike him once and he'll be dead and we'll be done. That was Abishai. David had stopped Abishai from killing him. And so Abishai's like, dude, what are you even saying? You have no clue what you're saying, Shimei. This is baseless. David, this guy's cursing you. Let me go kill him. He deserves death. Technically, by the law, he should be put to death, or at least harshly punished for cursing the king, the Lord's anointed, something that David said, I will not do. Again, ironic there. But what does the king do amidst this sadness? He's just lost his son who wants to kill him. He just hasn't heard about Mephibosheth. He still thinks Mephibosheth is turned against him and has turned away from him and hates him, despises him, has abused his love. Verse 10, but the king said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? If he's cursing because the Lord has said to him, curse David, who then shall say, why have you done so? David said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, my own son seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjamite? Leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look on the wrong done to me, and that the Lord will repay me good for his cursing today." So David and his men went on the road, while Shimei went alongside on the hillside opposite him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at him, and flung dust. And the king and all the people who were with him arrived weary at the Jordan, and there he refreshed himself. As they're on the way to the Jordan, this guy is just continually yelling, throwing dust, throwing rocks at him. And yet David does something pretty good here. He's not hasty and rash. He sees the hastiness and rashness of Abishai, and he's like, ooh, you know what? That's not good. I shouldn't be quick to just shed blood like that. Okay, I need to not do that. But, my own son wants to kill me. This guy hates me too. Okay, so be it. Maybe God's going to hear this, and he's going to fight for me. God's going to get vengeance for me. God will defend me. I don't need to do it myself. It would have been easy for David to just give in to that emotion, give in to some kind of anger, give in to some sort of frustration. How dare that guy talk to me like that? He's got no clue. He has no idea how much I protected those people, how much I honored them even in their deaths. I wrote songs about them. How dare he call me a man of blood, call me a murderer? Guess what? David does a good job of restraining himself, having self-control in the midst of probably very high emotions. This is a good example of what David does, and so we want to follow that kind of example as well. So point number 2, write down this: avoid emotionalism by self-control. Avoid emotionalism by self-control. You're either going to be controlled by your emotions, or you are going to seek to control those emotions and control yourself. And that kind of self-control that we have is a fruit of the Spirit. It only comes from God, the true kind of self-control. People can appear self-controlled. People can be very disciplined. There's many athletes who can be very disciplined and who are have a zero godliness in them, have zero connection to God. The Spirit of God is not in them at all, but they can seem self-controlled. But the true kind of self-control only comes from God. In these instances, they are self-controlled. How many times do you hear about those people who are very disciplined, very practiced at whatever they do? Maybe they're a musician, maybe they're a sports star, and yet something happens where they're so angry and they just explode. Guess what? They can have self-control over here in a way, but it's not true self-control. Amid emotions, don't be emotion controlled. We need to be self-controlled instead. And how does David do that? How does David have that kind of self-control? It's by remembering a few things. Firstly, he remembers, hey, I'm supposed to be leading the people here. I'm supposed to be executing justice. As he walks through and says, hey, Zeruiah, that's not what we're about here. Let's stop that. If we're going to avoid emotionalism by self-control, let's, letter A, do that by remembering your purpose. What are you here to do? Why are you here? Remember your purpose. Remember what God has called you to. You're here to show God's glory to the world. So let me ask you, in your emotionalism, when you give into that, is God being glorified when you tailgate the guy who just cut you off? And you're angry and you're upset about that. Is God glorified by that? No, he's not. So let's not do that. Let's turn to what God says instead. A beautiful picture of that you can see in Romans 12. Romans 12, 16 to 21. Big passage. You can look at it later. It's great to really look through and study through, but Romans 12, 16 to 21 is so helpful in this. It starts out by saying this: live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Can you imagine if David had gone into this situation thinking haughtily, thinking highly of himself? Well, I shouldn't be being exiled right now. I should just get the respect of my son. I should just have all these things. And then someone starts yelling at him. What's the immediate response? You don't have the right to do that. Yeah, guess what? Abishai, go cut him down right now. Maybe I'll do it myself. That's the response that's going to happen. if you are haughty, thinking highly of yourself. But no, I'm going to associate with the lowly. I'm going to understand that. Talking about that in the Beatitudes on the weekend. It says, never be wise in your own sight. To stop and think and consider, ask someone else, hey, you know what? This is how I'm thinking of this situation. There was someone who was mean to me at work. They did this, and I really want to do this. Is that the good, godly thing to do? I don't want to be wise in my own eyes. I don't just want to come up with something in my own head and think, well, yeah, I think there's a verse that says that in the Bible, something along those lines. No, let's go get godly counsel. Go to your brothers and sisters. Hey, is this what I should do? Is this the right response? I don't want to be wise in my own eyes. Repay no one evil for evil. Whew. Had David not followed that one, Shimei could have gotten a mouthful. David, I'm sure, could have just started hurling insults right back at him, gotten into a yelling match right there in the ravine. But he doesn't. He has self-control. But give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. David, he's sitting here talking to, he's getting the insults from Shimei. He's got Abishai saying, hey, let me go kill him. Stops Abishai, and then he addresses everyone. He says, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is why. I want everyone to understand that I'm not in control of this situation. God's in control of the situation. Any vengeance that's going to come, that's going to be from him. That's exactly where Romans goes as well. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That is your purpose, Christian. How can I overcome evil right now? And I'm not going to overcome it by doing evil myself. That's just going to perpetuate it. That's going to make it worse. How can I overcome this evil with good? That's not giving into emotionalism. That's living by self-control, because I can guarantee you the emotion is going to want you to do something else. We need to leave all kinds of vengeance to God, not being overcome by evil, but overcoming it with good. Next, something helpful that David does here is he is talking to everyone and reminding himself of who he is, the position that they're in. It's another helpful thing that we can do as well, as David's like, yeah, I'm the king, but my own son wants to kill me. This is where we're at. To remind yourself of that is helpful. It can help with your self-control. So letter B, let's avoid emotionalism by self-control, by remembering your position. By remembering your position. Remember your position before God. You are a sinner saved by grace. Just like Mephibosheth is going to come to him later and say, I'm just a dead dog. I'm nothing. I had nothing. I claim nothing. That is the same thought that David is having here, remembering, I don't deserve anything. This guy's yelling at me. He's making false accusations, but still, I know I didn't do right in raising this kid. This is my own fault. I've caused this problem myself. David knew that his standing before God wasn't earned, it was given to him by grace, so he didn't assume he was owed anything. How do you need to do that in your relationships? You need to use your standing before God to guard yourself when you're emotionally charged. There's a lot of things out there that they're starting to come out with studies on. There's emotional eating. Probably heard that before. When you're really sad or you're really down and things like that, people will turn to food. God says, don't turn to food, turn to me. There's a semi-new thing that's called emotional spending, where people will now spend money, and it's mainly online purchases. And I was reading an article on it, and this is what a person who's studying this said, and it started long ago in the garden, but it started to be a big, big deal that everyone's starting to be more aware of in COVID and then post-COVID as well, especially with online orders and things. But this is what someone said who's been studying it. They said, it is guided by how you feel in a certain moment. When you buy something, you get a little rush of dopamine. It gives us a sense of control or a happy feeling. And is that what you're searching for? That emotionalism is not going to provide that for you. It may be a little burst of, oh, okay, yeah, I feel like I'm in control now. I feel like I've got something. Or a little bit of joy and excitement. Well, I've just got a treat for myself coming later, which is not necessarily bad to do, but if that's where you're putting your hope, then that is bad to do. That is wrong to do. Don't put your hope in that. Put your hope in God. Turn to Him. Remember that all good and perfect gifts come from God, not from yourself. Now, again, we get to look at what happens later on when David comes back with Shimei. Let's flip over to chapter 19 again. Chapter 19, verse 16. 2 Samuel 19:16. Shimei, it turns out, is literally the first person who meets David on his way back in, as he has found out, oh, this whole rebellion thing didn't work out. Guess what? David's back on the throne. And Shimei knows, oh, he walked right by my house as he left. He's going to walk right by my house coming back in. Maybe I should do something about that. Probably shouldn't leave it the way it was. So he goes out and he has a conversation. He makes sure he is the first one there. And if you look at verse 17, it says, and with him were 1,000 men from Benjamin. I saw someone said that seemed like he was posturing a little bit of like, hey, I got a bunch of my buddies, so don't try to kill me or anything. But most people agree, and I would agree, that he is actually doing the very opposite. He's trying to show, hey, I brought a whole bunch of loyal subjects with me. I went to my people of Benjamin, and I brought them over. Either subjects or soldiers, possibly. And King David, they're for you. Essentially a gift from him. But if you drop down to verse 19 of 2 Samuel 19, he says this, and he said to the king, let my lord hold me, let not my lord hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. Do not let the king take it to heart, for your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come this day, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king. And as he's saying these things, Abishai again is standing right next to David, and he's just thinking, you snake. You kidding me? Before, you're throwing rocks at the king. You're hurling insults. You're throwing sand to try to get his clothes dirty, get it in his eyes. And you're just going to come back and be like, oh, my bad, sorry. Really? Come on, man. So Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered, shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? Are you kidding? We're not going to let him get away with this, right, David? What does David say? But David said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should this day be as an adversary to me? Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel? And the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king gave him his oath. David says, you know what? I'm the king. And I know I'm the king. God promised me the kingdom. God not only promised me the kingdom, but he also promised me a line of kings. And somewhere down the line is going to come the Messiah, the one. Who's this guy? I don't care. It doesn't matter. We don't need to put him to death. His own sin's going to take care of him. And if you read later on, we won't get to it in our study, but in 1 Kings, sure enough, we see the end of Shimei. And it is his own sin. He causes it himself. And so he ends up dying because of his own foolishness, really. But what we can also do in remembering to avoid the emotionalism by self-control is doing what David here does and remember, hey, I know who I am in Christ. I know what he has given to me. We can do that by remembering God's promises. Letter C, write that down. We can avoid emotionalism by self-control by remembering God's promises. Remember what God has promised to you. And when you do that, the things that are making you feel emotional, the person that got in your face, the guy that cut you off, the jerk in the office next to you, it doesn't really matter that much. I've got everything promised to me. It doesn't matter. What do I care if someone rails against me when the God of the universe has promised to never take his love away from me? It doesn't matter. That's why I don't need to get revenge. I don't need to avenge myself. God said he's going to take care of it. And that's a promise too. I don't need to worry. I'm not going to give in to an emotional state. I'm going to have self-control. I may want to do those things, and I'm sure David wanted to do that. Abishai certainly did. But David restrains him and says, no, we're not going to do that. Wisdom is knowing what God says and acting on it. So to look at God's promises, thank him for it, and act on it is going to be incredibly important. Now, quickly, we've got one last study to look at, but we're going to go back to 2 Samuel, not 16, but 17, the very end of that chapter. So David is continuing on his way out. Basically, we find out that David's spy that he sent back into Jerusalem, he's getting set up, he's getting in place, and they're going to be able to handle this that way. But in 2 Samuel 17, verse 27, we see this next section, this last group of people that David really interacts with. 27 says this, when David came to Mahanaim, Shobai the son of Nasha from Rabbah from the Ammonites, and Maker the son of Amiel from Lo-debar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought beds, basins, and earthen vessels, wheat, barley, flour, parched grain, beans, and lentils, honey, and curds, and sheep, and cheese from the herd, for David and the people, with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. These are three men who came along and said, hey, David, we're going to support you. We're going to provide for you. Even though you're out in the middle of the wilderness, you've got nothing out there. We still believe in you. We are still loyal to you. God gives him incredible friends who come alongside him and do great things. One of those names, Maker, the son of Amiel from Lo-debar, should be a little familiar because that's who Mephibosheth, that's who Mephibosheth was living with before he came to live with David. So Maker, the son of Amiel, he knows David pretty well. But we see all these guys giving to David, being generous to David. Even though he is in a difficult state, he has now had people, his son is trying to kill him. The person that he thought was his adopted son and cared about him seemingly has turned against him. He's got people who are just chasing after him, throwing rocks at him, hurling insults at him. This is a difficult time, and yet God still provides these good and faithful men to come alongside him. So point number 3, what we need to make sure that we do in these situations as well, when we face difficulties and trials, we need to avoid despair by thanksgiving. Avoid despair by thanksgiving. To remember how good God is, despite the difficulty, despite the trial. God is so good. He will still provide. Whatever he does is going to be good, and it's going to end up good. We see these three men be so generous to David. It would have been easy for David to give up to despair, and despair looks very different for many people. Sometimes it's a very resigned despair. Well, there's just nothing I can do in this situation, so I'm just going to give up. Not even going to try anymore. Why try? Doesn't even matter. There's that kind of resigned. There's a kind of resigned that, where is that? 2 Corinthians talks about that is an aimlessness. It's a perplexedness. What Paul says in there is he says we are perplexed, but we're not driven to despair. We may not know exactly what the future holds. We may be a little confused at the moment. I don't know what God's doing right now, but I'm not driven to despair. I'm not hopeless. I'm not in this state of I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to kind of go crazy. I'm not driven to despair. Sometimes despair looks like just plunging into sin. It's similar to a resignedness. Well, it doesn't really matter what I do anyway, so I'm just going to give into it. It's not worth fighting anymore. I'm just going to go for all the sin, just enjoy whatever I can at the moment, because there's nothing I can do. I've had people literally say that that's okay before to someone who was suffering when they were sitting there and they clearly were wanting to say things, and someone very worldly sat up and was like, hey, just say whatever you want. You get a free pass right now to say anything. You can use bad words, you can use bad language. It's okay. Everything will be forgiven. You're fine. And that person had to say, no, I'm not going to do that because that's still wrong. It's still not okay. My God still does not accept it, even though I'm in a difficult place. I can't just plunge myself into sin and let go. Love the way James 1 puts it. As I said, James 1 starts out by talking about trials. And he said to rejoice when you meet trials of various kinds. You should celebrate. You should be happy because that's going to produce steadfastness in you. And steadfastness is going to ultimately produce a completeness in you, which is good and helpful. But he says this in James 1:12, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him." That is what God has promised. We see that so well in these men, God being so good to David. David not going to give in to this despair. You guys will look at it and read it later, but Psalm 3 is the psalm that David wrote specifically when he goes into exile, when he leaves the city for Jerusalem, he leaves Jerusalem when he fled from Absalom, his son. And you will be able to see at the end, he starts out by saying, "My foes are many, many are rising against me," but he ends with, "Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessings be on your people." Thanking God, praising him for answering his prayers, thanking him for being a shield to him, even in the midst of all these enemies. David understood, I can combat this with thankfulness. So when you feel that difficulty, when you are in a hard time, make sure you go to God in thankfulness because he is being faithful. He is doing good things for you. And it will turn out for your good, even though it's going to seem hard and difficult. Ultimately, what happens later on, don't have time to go there right now, but basically in chapter 19, Barzillai the Gileadite, he's the only one who shows up after David comes back. And David is so thankful for what he has done, thankful for the sacrifices that he made. He says, hey, do you want to come in? I'll essentially adopt you the same way that I adopted our friend Mephibosheth here. Do you want to come in? You can be in my house all the time, and I'll give you food. I'd love to repay you in some way for your faithfulness, your kindness. And what Barzillai says is, hey man, I'm 80 years old, so I don't have a lot of time left. And all that good food that you've got, I can't really taste it. And all those awesome parties and the best singers in the country, they're going to come. The best musicians in the country, they're going to come play for you. My hearing's going a little bit, so I'm not going to be able to hear them very much. So thanks, but I'm going to die pretty soon. So I'm basically going to go home and be dead pretty soon here. But I've got someone else that I would love to be able to have come into your house and for you to give your blessings to him instead. And so that's exactly what David ends up doing, giving those blessings to another man. Not sure if that's his servant or his son or what exactly, how he knows Barzillai, but clearly Barzillai cares about this guy, puts him in a good spot. But those are the ways that we can see David handle the difficulty. And when trials come, and they will come, we are promised trials and tribulations. We want to make sure that we do these things well, avoid these pitfalls. Some of them David did well in, some of them David did not do well in. But if we are going to be people who glorify God in everything that we do, we've got to take these things seriously. So we're going to wrap up here, get into our regular small groups, talk about how we can do that and apply these things in our lives. So please pray with me. God, we thank you so much for giving us your word, God, for even telling us that we will face trials, God, for showing us the purpose of trials by telling us that we will be going through tribulation. We must go through them before we get to be with you. God, the world is against us. Satan's against us. Our flesh wants to destroy us. We are in a fallen world where our bodies are decaying. We will face so many different things. And yet, God, we can go through it with great confidence. We can go through those areas of life thankful and joyful, knowing that they will make us more like you. They will perfect and complete us. That God, you will use them to great effect in the lives of us and in the lives of other Christians and for even non believers if we stand and face these trials well, go through them well. So, God, I pray that we would truly avoid any kind of hastiness by wisdom. God, that we would avoid emotionalism by self control and avoid despair by thanksgiving. God, please let us do these things well to your honor and glory because you're deserving of all of it. We pray this in your name. Amen.